Hi, how's it going? It's Mike with the Portage County Safety Council. I'm here with my friend Tanya Miller from Antivirus Youth Program. Welcome, Tanya. There you go. I
Yeah.
like
Hey,
it.
thanks.
Show everyone,
Thanks.
show everyone what it is.
Yeah.
Back up
Antivirus
there.
Youth. Yep. There we go. This is our family edition book with our little shield on it. So I thought I would show that today.
That's awesome. So I met Tanya and learned about antivirus back all the way in 2012. Seems like a whole generation ago. And hasn't been that long. Just the older I get, the faster life goes, right? But I was blown away when we first met you back then, and I know I got to talk to you last year doing an audio podcast, and some of the stuff that you guys are doing is fantastic. Do you just want to share a little bit pre-COVID of what Antivirus Youth? I know it's changed a little bit now, but just share a little bit about what you guys done the last 4 or 5 years with youth around high schools and middle schools.
Yeah. So actually, when we met Mike, it was in 2012. That was our first year that we went into a public school setting with the Antivirus Youth material. So we are a secular program that we go into private schools. Mostly public schools is what we go into, but we can have Catholic schools and pick us up too, but athletic teams. But really our focus was not business and government, which is another sector of our organization. So we're like an arm of that and organization. And that adult program is called Global Priority or Global Priority Solutions. And you could go to globalpriority.org to check out the adult version of these values, these character values we're talking about in the classroom.
Hey, let me stop there for 1 second. For those you may have never heard of Global Priority Solutions, you probably heard of John Maxwell. Mm-hmm. And John Maxwell sits on the board, correct? Just to give someone some kind of parameter of what they're dealing with there.
Right.
A lot of leadership, a lot of value-based principles.
So you can see John is in our book. Yep, absolutely. He's on our advisory board. Yeah, so absolutely.
That's awesome. So if you're looking for more business, like you said, check that out. Just Google Global Priority Solutions. Fantastic principles and value-based leadership material.
Yeah, they're doing tons of trainings actually on Zoom, and because of the pandemic right now, everybody's had to get creative, and so you can go to that website and learn about that adult program. So we focus on the schools. Like I'm Antivirus Youth, and I focus on the school systems, and so our focus is mostly middle school. Okay, so between that 6th and 8th grade. Now we developed a high school program, and that's called Regeneration. And we have a 4th grade material called Defenders. But really what we found in the US, but also here in Ohio, is educators said, we're great at elementary level, do good, be kind, work hard, right? Be generous. And then in high school, you get tons of prevention, right? You remember DARE, don't drink and drive, remember the AIDS pandemic, that was the AIDS generation. We grew up in that. We didn't know what it was, but nobody wanted to get it. Prevention programs, those are called prevention programs. And prom promise, all of that stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember the prom promise. You had to sign
the little pen. You got the little pen.
You got the pen. Yeah, exactly. And so high school is great because now you have the don't texting stuff. You have the opioids. Of course, you have a lot of people that get into coming in and talking about drug prevention. Of course, abstinence programs. But high schools are good at that stuff. But it was that middle school age that character development just kind of fell by the wayside. And so here we had no idea we were filling a need of filling a hole in the school systems in 2012. So we had 3 schools by the relationship of our educational consultant, who's a retired superintendent. Through his relationship, he said, I can open 3 schools for you just to run a pilot. We need to see if this is going to work. If this works, then maybe we'll grow. Right. We had 545 students in that 2012. And now to date, we have over 10,000 school systems.
Wow.
Or 10,000 students, over 90 school systems that have brought in the Antivirus Youth Education Program. And why is it called antivirus, right? I mean, what is this antivirus? Well, nobody wants a computer virus, all right? Because it slows everything down.
Right.
But our minds are like computer systems. And when our minds are like a computer system, we need to deprogram sometimes. We need to take out the junk that's in there. So that's why it's called antivirus. We were not named for this pandemic. Okay. And that's what everybody thinks now. Well, every year, trust
Are
me.
you guys get more hits on your website now because the COVID-19, they're coming out? I need an antivirus. They're looking for vitamin C or something. They come and get you.
That's right. And what's so crazy is that every year mentoring, we had something that the media was going to tell us was going to impact us. Like we had H1N, with the first year we started, which was H1N1.
Right.
And it was avian flu. And then we went into Ebola. Because kids we'd say, why do you think we're here? Let me hold up this book. Why do you think we're here? And they're like, you're here to talk to us about Ebola. You're here to talk to us about the swine flu. Never, because we witnessed this for years. Did we ever think we would actually be facing a true pandemic, and like we are now? So are we named for the time? I'm not sure, but I do know this, that through connecting with the students this year, some of our school systems, it was a great tool to introduce the program. We're not here to talk about that virus, but some kids, this became a shield. Like they shut down. They were like, oh, and it was like our mentor was like, okay, we're not even going to talk about the virus anymore. And so we really have to take that seriously for this next phase of where we're in. Because in our 10,000 students, okay, so in Northeast Ohio, we're probably about 75 to 80 school systems. A third of them have let us as a mentor come in and teach that program.
That's fantastic.
So we're thankful. A third of us said, no. And then another third said only online. So we use videos. We had to do like quick little videos, and the teacher just let it. So our program is mentorship. And so that's what we train mentors to go out from the outside the community, inside of the school system between 6th and 8th grade to teach this program.
And you guys are focused on character, and you guys have certain particular traits or principles. Do you just want to kind of name off a few of those just to give people an idea of what it is that you're actually teaching kids when you show up to a school?
Sure. So volume 1, which is the platform where most of our schools will, of course, start out at. The very first value the students talk about is ambition. If you don't have a goal in life, then you don't know where you want to be, and you don't know where you want to aim for. And so we talk about what ambition not only is, but what it looks like. Because, 6th grade, 7th grade, they're like, they can read the word ambition, some of them.
Right.
But they're like, but what does it actually look like in my life? Yeah. So we talk about, what does ambition actually look like? Well, it's going home and doing your homework right away. It's putting things like this to the side, shutting it off, and saying, I'm not going to do anything else until I finish this homework. Okay. It's getting up and doing the dishes the first time your mom asks, right? Okay. So getting out of bed, before when your alarm goes off, and not having a parent saying, get out of bed. So we set goals with them. So the second one we talk about is responsibility. So you have ambition, and then you have responsibility that connects with that. And when you have responsibility that connects with that, it's really important that, so it threads together. Then we have hard work, and then we have emotions, we have restraint, we have common sense, and generosity. So we always end with something really fun and light with the students. Then we have a volume 2, a volume 3 that we're developing and getting ready to print. Actually, I think this week we're getting ready to print our volume 3. And then we have a high school program. So that's what the antivirus program looks like. And then a mentor delivers that in the classroom. Talks about those specific character values 1 day a week for 10 sessions is what we ask for.
That's awesome. Hi, Don.
Hey there. Sorry, I'm joining you late. I ran into an issue at work and I had to take care of it. But I'm here.
Hey, no problem. We're just talking to Tanya about antivirus youth, and we're going through the process here. And so Tanya, before we get into some of Don's stuff about Generation Z, which I think is real crucial, what are you seeing out in schools? Because the series we're doing is really trying to focus in on stress, and it's targeted both for employers and our personal life. And what we see is, that the worlds combine, right? They flow into one, and we like to say, don't bring that stuff to work. But the reality is we do, and we try not to sometimes in professionalism, but the truth is it affects us either way, right? And so a lot of parents out there, especially with the stress of teaching from home and trying to balance out work and careers and with kids and going back and forth with COVID-19, the family structure is really a main stressor, particular relationships with those young middle school, high school age kids. And so a lot of parents have lost hope. They're like, there's nothing I could do. They've already learned it. They learned this at school. They learned this from there. But you're seeing a different picture. So what are you seeing in schools when you're in there that could give those parents hope and say, hey, they're really not as lost as you may think they are?
Well, I think students are number one. We have come to find out they want to talk about things. Okay, they want to talk about what they're experiencing. They don't necessarily want to talk about the pandemic, but they want to talk about how they're emotionally processing. And so far this year, we've had some really interesting dialogue with our mentors saying that the students want to voice their opinion. They want to in a safe way. And then I think also the mentors, what they're finding out is with the wisdom that they're bringing in is, you know what, this won't last forever. History has shown that this won't last forever, although it feels like a forever process to have forward thinking. Yeah. And I know as far as adults, we're all struggling to have forward thinking, because here's the thing. Okay, let's focus on a trip that we thought we would go to Disney this year, right? Well, that was taken away from us. We would like to think we could go next year, but we don't know if we can. And so it's hard to have those markers in your face to say, okay, let's think forward. But really, there's a generation that has gone through things. And it's like, for Generation Z, this would be great grandparents, but if they're still alive. But having conversations with my grandparents, who I'm fortunate they're near 90, they're still alive, they're weathering this well because they have weathered a lot of things. They grew up in the Depression. They knew what it was like to have just eat bologna and bread, Wonder Bread.
I'm definitely not part of that generation.
But they weathered it.
Right, they did, yes.
They weathered it. They weathered drafts. And so when you talk to them, it's like, it'll be okay. Like there is a very strong, resounding voice. It's like, you know what? It's the season. We'll get through it. And we have Wi-Fi. I mean, we didn't have Wi-Fi. You can still get your groceries. My grandma was like, I remember at Christmas, I was just telling my daughter this. I remember at Christmas, my daddy would go to the grocery store because one time a year, a semi truck would come in on Christmas Eve and bring in oranges. And we would all get one orange in our stocking on Christmas Eve. And we got to eat this orange. And I'm like, my daughter is telling her, she's like, what? You don't have oranges?
So you mentioned something earlier though, Tanya, that I really want to kind of go back and just hit that real quick. You mentioned programming our minds. I think that's such an important aspect of what Global Priority Solutions and Antivirus Youth does that I think employers could really take advantage of. And us as parents is really, when you look at it, our conscious mind programs our subconscious mind. I like to think of our conscious mind is the screen on our phones, on our iPhones, and the iOS system is our subconscious mind. And many people don't realize that, and so what happens is we program by what we focus on. Just like if you see, I bought a GMC Acadia off my uncle a few years back, and I never even heard of a GMC Acadia. And I told my wife, I don't even think these things are on the road. I don't think they exist. If he didn't own one, I wouldn't even know they're out there. And so I remember driving down the road and I had this impulse to look to the left and behold, a GMC Acadia was on the road. I'm like, well, there's two I've seen. And then I'd look to the right and there's another one. And I'm like, okay. And then, I know people get caught up in the law of attraction and all these different mystical things, but really it's your brain and you focus on it because I was going to buy it. And then my brain starts, it's like pop-up ads. Hey, Mike, look to the left, look to the right. And literally we program ourselves. So a lot of our decision-making comes from that programming. When we go to respond, our subconscious mind pops up these this is how we handle this situation. This is how we handle that. This is what we do. And I've noticed with dieting, exercise, budgeting, and all these different things, literally the initial phase is the hardest. But once we start to reprogram ourselves, it's like for a season, we become double-minded because, for 20, 30, 40 years, we programmed ourselves one way, and then we're giving ourselves the healthy habit. And there's a timetable there until our subconscious switches over. So I guess what I'm leading all that into is when you guys talk about having ambition, having character, hard work, all these different things, respect for other people and integrity and all these things. When you start to, and Don, this kind of applies to what you do as well at GPS, but Tanya, like, what are you seeing for these kids that they're receptive? Like a lot of parents would think if I go sit down and talk to my kid about leadership or ambition, they're going to laugh at me and want to talk about, I don't even know who's popular pop star anymore. I still, think about Sublime and Nirvana, and it's been, 40 years probably since it. I don't even know who the cool, whatever it is, or the next viral video they're going to talk about. I sound like such an old fogey, I swear. But they're receptive to this character development training, aren't they? You're going in schools with their friends and you're getting their attention like that, and they're real receptive. Why do you think that is?
Because we're allowing them space to express their feelings. And I really think that's the most important thing that everybody needs to hear is to allow your student, your child to express their feelings. And it's not like, hey, you good? You got homework? You good? Like, it's like, no, how are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? And if they're not open to talk to you, then to encourage to find somebody to talk to that they can trust, whether it's somebody in the community, a youth leader, your aunt, maybe you have a better connection with your aunt or your mom's friend, but to have an ability to talk to somebody that you trust. And in most of our values, like part of our action steps, it would be find somebody that you can trust. And, a lot of them are coaches, but it is addressing that need. Like, how are you doing? I want to be sensitive on how I say this. Somebody that I'm very well aware of, very close to in my life, their son was having a hard time breathing. And so they booked an appointment, took him to the pediatrician, and asked Dad to leave the room. And Dad left the room for a short period of time. The pediatrician asked a bunch of questions. Are you afraid of COVID? Are you afraid of getting a virus? Are you afraid of somebody dying? How are you doing in school? Blah, 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 blah. Brought in the dad after the questions and said, you know what? This is just stress related because of the changes in the school system. And the pediatrician said, listen, son, literally said this, listen, son, you are not 1 in 6 in your classroom that feel like this. You're 1 in 2. And so in one day, I have 30 patients. 6 of these patients will be kids your age who have the exact same feelings you're feeling. Okay. So, and immediately the student was like, this child was like, you mean I'm not the only one that feels like this? And he said, no, honey, you're not the only one. About everyone around you in your 7th grade is feeling the exact same way you are. Whether it's, and it could be symptoms, could be different. For you, you feel that palpitation of the heart. You feel like you can't breathe. But for some, they might be breaking out in rashes. For some, their hair might be falling out. For some, they can't focus. They feel like they can't focus, so their grades are struggling. But here's what I want you to hear. Is the validation that you are not alone in this was all the reinforcement that he needed to calm him down. Wow. And the pediatrician did not offer medication, which, that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. But just said, but it was really the validation that you are not alone, and that it brought peace. It brought peace. It calmed him down to know that this isn't just me. This is a lot of other people. So here's what the remedy was. When they got in the car, the dad, he was also a coach, and a teacher said, okay, let's talk about breathing exercises. We're going to talk about ways to calm ourselves down. We're going to talk about our mood and how this can affect the way we relate to people, the mood. And he was like, oh, so, and then the dad shared and said, at the beginning of the school year, I was feeling this stress too. And I wasn't that nice to be around. Remember that? Remember when I lashed out at
Sure, a lot of people are relating to that right now.
Yes, because we're lashing out and we don't know why, but why is because we're under stress.
Right.
And we don't see a forward future right now, but there is one. And that's what's so important for all of us to hear, is that there is a forward future, and to calm ourselves down by using these natural techniques and talking to your doctor, but talking to somebody that you need to talk to. Could just be in your own circle that you trust to help you calm down. And so that's why our program is so effective, because we talk about a lot of emotional things in our character value program. And Dawn is here. She could talk about the adult version of that, where you are talking about the internal self, not just the external self. But that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's funny. I hear a lot of, in the HR world, we have about a third of our members are HR managers and directors and different things. Mm-hmm. And you hear all the time about turnover, retention. And I know Don's got some direct experience with some miraculous case study stuff that you guys done at a former company I think you guys owned and managed and things. And maybe you can get into that. If not, that's fine. But it's just amazing how when you talk about retention and in coming from the safety world, it's so funny that people actually, it's the same thing. When the best companies that have the best results in safety are the most engaging, they're the most people oriented, and they establish that trust between them. And a lot of it is they have an open door policy where they allow that communication and they validate those feelings. Even if they don't necessarily agree with what's being said, they kind of create that relationship and they move on. But even when they disagree, there's that trust, the bridge of trust that's developed there. So Don, let's get into you. And before we get into Generational Z, because I really want to pick your brain on it, because I'm actually kind of tired of hearing about millennials because they're in their 40s now, right? And so I just missed it. My wife's a millennial. I just missed it by 2 years. I have a little bit of Gen X and millennial tendencies, but I'm like, I've been through so many trainings. It's funny that people are still talking about it. But Gen Z is in the workforce now. Hello. And so but before we get into that, do you want to tell people just a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'd love to.
You got a great podcast I've been listening to, Living as a Leader and Global Priority Solutions. You do all kinds of things. So go ahead and just tell them a little about yourself. And
yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Mike. I am family business has been my life. So that's the first thing you probably should know, is I've been in family business since I was a little girl. Like, we treated our business like other people treat farms. We had chores, we had things that we did. Like, that was like, business was life, because mom and dad both worked all the time. And this was back in the 70s and the 80s. So that's where I was too. And so it started out my career really young. And since then worked at other places too, but have stayed a lot in family business.
Yeah.
Have been a CEO of a company of about 400 or 500, where we were doing satellite installations, maybe 1,200 homes a day all over the state of Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a lot. I have a lot of experience with, safety and retention and all those things you talked about, for sure. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. I've got 2 Gen Zs and 2 Millennials. So I have a lot of experience there. And I do a lot of research on generations and just trying to bring generations together, both in the home and in the workplace. And just, and I write values. So that's another thing I do. I write a roundtable. It's called a Roundtable Methodology. And it's where you can sit around a table. It's kind of the grown-up version of Tanya's antivirus, where you can sit around a table. And we use this in a lot of businesses, but also in a lot of families and different volunteer organizations around the world. I mean, all over the world. We've been a part of country transformation initiatives where there's 500, 600,000 people all in these roundtable values, where every week, those are places like Guatemala, Costa Rica, Paraguay. I've even worked with a team, and they're their own team and they're doing their own thing, but I've been advising a team in Ireland where they're doing a country transformation there. So all over the world, just bringing values in. So what does that mean? That's such a big term, but values, it's those crucial conversations that you were talking about, how our mind thinks. It's that time where we bring ourselves in alignment with a value. So maybe it's respect. Maybe it's empathy. Those are values that we talk about. Maybe it's hope. Hope is one of our values. And so it's that time to just sit for a minute, have some self-reflection, and have personal revelation on what could I do to grow 1% this week, to become more in alignment so that my life gets easier to manage. So anyway, that's, we really believe in investing in people and giving people the tools they need to grow and to thrive, so their relationships are always on the upswing and not on the downturn.
Now let's talk about this for a minute, because you guys even did Supreme Court. Was it Guatemala? If I
Yes,
remember
we did
correctly.
Supreme Court. Mm-hmm.
You guys came in and trained the Supreme Court, a corrupt Supreme Court of another country. And you saw some in prison systems where literally you came and trained the prison guards, not the prisoners. That's backwards for American thinking. Well, we'll deal with the prisoners, but yeah, we're fine. No. It's not how it works. We'll start with the top and work our way down. And what are some of the results that you've seen in the, with the Supreme Court and some of the prison systems, just real quick out there, so people get an idea of the magnitude of how powerful teaching simple values in an engaging type way, like a roundtable, what kind of impact it can have?
Absolutely. So in the prison, we were in the first place that we really got an institution, a government institution to go into, was the prison of Columbia. And we're like, we're not a prison, we're not prison ministry. Like, that's not what we do. And yet the door was open. So we went in there and we had people that went in and worked with those guards, people from Columbia. So it was people from the area, in the area that we had been working with for years, who went into Columbia and trained the guards on doing roundtables, conducted roundtables. And eventually what we saw happen in those prisons is that the inmates started to recognize a difference in the guards. And when they recognized that difference, they said, we want what they have. They wanted to get involved.
That's so
Crazy,
beautiful.
I know.
I've heard this 100 times,
is.
and it still gets me every time I hear it.
There's a wonderful documentary on lared.org. It's LARED.org. And if you look that up and you look into the videos, you'll see the documentary on the Columbia prison system. So you can listen to that for yourself. But it's in their own words. It's really a beautiful story.
So employers out there listening to this is not just like missions. This is not just third world. This is right here, the United States of America, right? I mean, you were the CEO of a satellite installation company for the entire state of Ohio. And you guys, the numbers I can't remember, but it was around, you had what, like 23% retention. And then, and then I mean, a lot of people can relate to that. People may go, oh, but I mean, that's pretty tough, right? So within a year you had, 75, 76, 77.
Turned it around.
Employees leave, turn around. And then you started doing these hour-a-week roundtables, just teaching basic core values. What some people say, well, that's common sense. I don't need to waste my – no. It builds so many things. And what happened a year when you guys measured again after doing 1 hour roundtables with every single staff person within that year? What happened to the retention?
Yeah, we saw retention totally flip-flop. So we'd been 75% loss, 25% retention, and we saw that flip-flop to 75% retention and 25% loss, which, I mean, when you look at that, that's real dollars. So we figured, and I think we were being pretty conservative in our estimation, is it's about $5,000 for us to onboard a technician. So when you consider that, when you've got 400 technicians, you do the math, that's a big piece of change. And that money could then be reinvested into vehicles for people, so they had better trucks to drive, into equipment, into salaries, into benefits. I mean, there was a lot that we were able to do with that and really help turn some things around. It's not the answer for everything. I mean, there's things in industries that are really tough these days. And we all know, when you study out generations, as we move into millennials and especially into Gen Zs, we don't have that same thought that I'm going to be at a company for 40 years until I retire. Our thought is we're going to be maybe for 5 years. We expect to have maybe 5 or 6 careers now. And so it's very different. So I don't want to oversell, but it can really make a difference because of, I think the biggest thing is that people feel they are engaged. When they ask people why they leave employers, or, a lot of it, they'll say, oh, it's the leadership. Okay. And when you dig a little further in, it's that people are not engaged. And so when you're able to engage them in the roundtable, because you said teach, and I appreciate that, but we're really not teaching it. What we're doing is we're facilitating. We're sitting around a table, we're talking about a concept, and every person contributes and then has a time of self-reflection. How do I fall on this? How well am I doing with this value of respect? What are the benefits I could gain if I raise my rating? Who do I know that's affected me positively? And what is a simple action that I can take this week that I'm measuring? It's a SMART goal. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's all those things, time bound, relevant, time bound. So all those things, Tanya, all those things you've got that you, and so that's what we're looking. How do we help people even set a goal? How do we set them up for a win? How do they, so we did roundtables. I remember I had someone else facilitate them. It was one of my co-trainers, because I'm a trainer for the company. And so one of the co-trainers, and I said, well, why don't you come in and do it? Because it was one of our companies and I thought it would be good. And he's wonderful. And so Bernie came in to do the roundtable and he said, okay, so how do you want me to set this up? How do you want me to talk about the problems you're having? I'm like, oh, no, that's not what this is about. This isn't about talking about our problems or trying to get people on board. This is about taking a few minutes to invest in these people every week, because they're investing a huge part of their lives in this company. So how can we give back? How can we invest in them? Yeah, it'll make the company better, but guess what? It's going to make their life better. They make better choices, not just here. Because so many times I saw when people are making not so great choices at work or doing things I wish they weren't doing, when I found out the rest of the story, there was so much more involved in their personal life. And if I could help them out at that level, and not by telling them what to do, but by allowing them a few minutes of self-reflection and self-revelation, that is huge, huge. People felt like I cared about them. People felt like the company cared about them, and it made a huge difference in their engagement.
Probably 4 or 5, 6 years ago, because I went through your guys' training back in 2012, and Tanya and I were talking about that earlier. I did this presentation, and I had some local business leaders in there, and I took up, I told them your story and the success rate you had with retention. And, I saw the look on her face, like, well, I couldn't give up an hour a week. And I'm like, well, I knew you were going to say that. So look at this chart. And I made a bar graph of the average cost of turnover, and I based it on this lowest average, which you mentioned. And according to SHRM and some of the research I did back then, 5,000 was probably the lowest rate of turnover, I think, for an $8 an hour employee, which most minimum wage now I think is over that, as far as maybe not in every state, but like most people are making, I think Walmart, they're paying 12, 13 bucks an hour now. So most people are making way over that. And if you compare that cost of turnover, if you took an hour a week at someone, and I think I did $8 an hour, 15 and 20 and 25, just to kind of give them a scale of what the turnover would cost annually. Because some of our employers, they were having 60% turnover. They're losing 60% of their staff, in steel companies and different things. And some of that's going to be industry related because the type of work they're doing, but still. And I put it on there, and I'm like, if you go through, it was funny because you look it up, and the cost of the wage to have them sit an hour a week in a roundtable that they thought, well, I can't pay them, I'm going to lose all this money. They actually save money on the turnover cost, at least going out 2 or 3 years. And it was amazing. They were like, whoa, I never thought about it. And
we've worked it out too, where you don't have to take the full hour. If you take a smaller group, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
5 people, 30 minutes. And that's very doable in companies. 30 minutes. I mean, we waste that amount of time every day for sure. And so if we get people more engaged, if we just even forget retention, let's just get it turned around so that we're not wasting so much time, that we're more productive. If we can turn it into productive time, into team time, one thing is it builds trust. And, I don't know how many people out there have read The Speed of Trust. Great book. But The Speed of Trust talks about how we lose so much time because we don't trust. One story I love is like 9/11. They talk about how, when 9/11 happened, that changed the way our airports run. And all of a sudden we needed more security. We needed more everything to go. Now it takes a lot longer to get through the airport. If you think back to the olden days before 9/11, we'd zip right through, right? If you had 20 minutes to get to your plane, you thought you had a lot of time, and it's not like that anymore. And it cost them so much because they never thought, they trusted that passengers on an airplane would never want to blow the airplane up. And when that changes, when that trust was lost, everything took longer and costs more. And it's the same way in our businesses. When you lose trust, it takes longer and it costs more. Even if you don't see it, it's there. You really sit back and examine it. So that time to build trust, if it's 30 minutes a week to build trust between people, it more than pays off.
So let's talk about Gen Z now. This is relevant, going into what Tanya talked about earlier and the employment stuff you're talking about. But, so we have that hybrid thing we're trying to do today of like, we want to talk about work. We also want to talk about personal life because those things kind of balance and affect one another. So what are the characteristics of Generation Z? Because they're in the workforce. What are they up to, about age 23 now? They were born in what, 1997, I think is the
Yep, about
typical
1907 is
range.
about right.
So
Yeah.
what are some of the characteristics of generational Z, and how are they different from millennials? Because I think a lot of us older folks that are baby boomers or Gen Xers, we kind of lump millennials and Gen Z together, but there's similarities, but there's a lot of differences, aren't there?
There are, one of the big differences when it comes to work is to understand people's work views. Okay. It's like in compensation and things.
Mhm.
So when you look at, we go from like, say the baby boomers, they live to work. Okay. Go to
Right.
Gen X, it's work-life balance. You move to millennials, they work to live. Now, when you get to Gen Z, that is totally thrown out. It's not even about work anymore. Ideas. It's ideas are capital. That's what it's not even about work. The work thing isn't about work, it's about ideas. And that's been reinforced by people like Mark Zuckerberg and all those people that they come up with this idea, watch Shark Tank. That's it for you. Come up with an
Right.
idea and this is how you can make money. So ideas are currency for Generation Z. So right there, when you think of it that way, you start out at a way different place. You're looking at people who value creativity and diversity in a much greater way than what generations previous have, including millennials. So before it used to be said, oh, Gen Z is millennials on steroids. I think Gen Z and millennials are very different, very different. Gen Z has a much more conservative approach. They're not as positive. They're not as optimistic as millennials, which if you're a millennial, you think, I'm not that optimistic. Well, compared to Gen Z, you may be. So there's some things there that are really, and there's some key values too, because Tanya was talking about values, key values for Gen Z. They really need the understanding of a couple, which is boundaries and resilience. Those are two that are critically needed in Gen Z that they're missing a lot of. They're parented differently. I was parented, I'm Gen X. I was parented by a trainer. Now the Gen Zs, they say their parents are snowplow parents. So you went from trainers to nurturers. I'm a nurturer because I'm Gen X.
Right.
Now my millennials are looked at as helicopters. Like they'll kind of swoop in, to help things out. And then you move to Gen Z and they've been parented by snowplows. That means clear every obstacle. Make the way clear for them so they have no stress. And I think that's happened because as we were talking earlier about, I heard you and Tanya's talking about all the stresses that there are, because I could list those stresses and go on for days. They're dealing with so much more than what I dealt with because of the internet, because of just exposure to things that they're probably really not ready emotionally to deal with. That is the parent, because I'm a parent of a Gen Zer. And do I see myself treating my Gen Z different than my millennial? I more was a helicopter. I fit the description perfectly. I helicoptered my millennials. I'd swoop in when I thought they needed saving. But the Gen Z, I'm always trying to look, how can I make this the clearest way? Because I have a daughter who struggles with anxiety and she's already at the max all the time. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to make this easier? But because of that, there's some things relationally that have been stagnated. There's other generations, we can talk face to face, we can communicate with our words better. But when it comes to Gen Z, things that make them comfortable are texting. So I just look at simple things with Gen Z, with businesses and say, okay, let's look at, first of all, how are you recruiting? Are you using technology in your recruiting? What does your training process look like? Are you using all these different things that they're used to seeing in school? Are you utilizing that? Are you throwing them some pieces of paper that have been copied 400 times and you can barely read anymore and say, here's your training manual? Right. So there's some real practical things that come in with that too when you look at Gen Z in the workplace. Do you have YouTube videos for them to look at? Do you have the different interaction, the things that they're used to having at school? And that's the other thing is you have to think about how school works. In school, they are dealing a lot now with what we're doing right now. We are doing a podcast through like a Zoom module. Okay. They're doing that kind of stuff in school. 2020 has changed how they look at school, how they look at everything. And so because of that, when those things are lacking in the workplace, if the workplace is outdated, if we haven't done any kind of a facelift lately, if we haven't rebranded, like if we are stuck back, we've had the same logo since 1972 and we're proud of that. They don't see that as a good thing.
Right.
They see that as a place that is never going to change, is not willing to accept ideas, and doesn't want to move forward. So you have to look at that and think, wow, okay, I've got to really rethink my whole program here.
So one of the characteristics I've read just real briefly, the little bit of stuff I've looked up on Gen Z, financially, they're completely different. Like you said, they're more conservative, aren't they? They lived through the
Mhm.
housing market crash, 2008, 9, that era, and see their parents struggle through that. So now as adults, they tend to, from what I've read, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, they tend to gravitate toward financial security
Mhm.
more than what they enjoy, more than more meaningful work that millennials preferred.
Yes. I think
So
that's very true. I mean, I think they would like to have the meaningful work, but they are more, I've got a Gen Z son who just got married a week ago. And so my Gen Z son that just got married, he and his wife are very focused on the basics. Like they feel very much like a builder, like my grandma. Okay. It's
yeah,
focusing on, I want to have this security so that my life can be okay. Because they're a little traumatized. And so they're feeling like I need to, like they have a little apartment, something they can manage. You know, they're like very on board for tiny houses and
almost like
simplifying their life.
minimalism, right? Almost like
Very
minimalism. I've
much.
seen a lot
Yes.
of them they almost have a minimalistic type mentality, but then they'll spend, they'll buy a little more higher end stuff, like a Patagonia
Yes.
sweater or something, but they won't have more than one or two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
They
want
want
to
Whereas
to
my
know
know.
generation, we got closets, we need house size closets to fit our stuff in. It's a little
Yeah.
bit different, right?
But very eco-friendly. Like there's a high
Mhm.
priority on the ecosystem for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And so if it's made in America, if it's made with organic material, they'll spend more to have it, but have less.
Right. And
Yeah. Like
so
I want the electric Sonicare toothbrush and my son wants the bamboo toothbrush because the bamboo
I
is
didn't even know there was such
recyclable.
a thing. I didn't even know that.
Yes. They
I'll have
even
to.
have them in Walmart now. I was shocked. I thought they were only on Amazon. I went to Walmart to buy toothbrushes and I'm like, huh, they have those here now. But I noticed like, you know, they're very conscious of, you know, he stopped by and it's like, oh, we're on our way to take our recycling over. We're da, da, da. It's like they are very eco-conscious. And
Yeah.
it's something that's drilled into them since they were little through things
Sure.
like Nickelodeon, Disney, those
Right.
places were drilling that into them. And so now it's very much a part of who they are because it was a part of their, I always say that generations are made up of parents, politics, and pop culture. And recycling and understanding, taking care of the earth and being conscious of your footprint, those are things that are part of their pop culture.
And I
And
think
so it's very much a part of who they are.
that's what's so important about what you guys do. Tanya, you're starting at a younger age. I think as early as you can get, the better. And what you do with adults on it just goes through the whole process, the whole lifespan. Because I notice at 42, my value system has changed and my priorities have shifted. In my 20s, it was all about making money, get my career going. And then I got into my 30s. I'm like, I wanted to be happy and do something meaningful and find purpose. And now that I've found all those, now it's a completely different objective. It's much more relationship based than it was in my 20s and 30s. And so some of that is the stages of life, but I just like how it's there. And those universal principles that you guys talk about in all those characteristics, they don't shift through those stages. They're relevant to every single stage. It's a beautiful thing. So we're approaching on the holidays. We have Thanksgiving up, like I think less than 2 weeks, right? And so we're
Mhm.
right around there. And then we have Christmas coming up. One of the biggest areas of stress for a lot of people. And I hear this all the time. I have to remind them because I kind of cut a lot of that out. We do Thanksgiving with friends. And so there's not like the crazy uncle that nobody likes that makes everyone mad. We don't really deal with that. So we kind of dealt with that years ago. But one of the hardest things is communicating through those different generations. And, with politics and everything going on, it just, there's a lot of flammable things that could happen. And what are some tips that you guys give? And I don't know if Tanya, you want to jump in here first, and then Don, you can answer as well. What we come in here is, and it's not just focused on parents, but just overall, how do we handle the holidays from people that are different than us? We'll just keep it that simple. Tanya, you want to go and jump in there?
Yeah, as far as the students, we talk about just having a peaceful atmosphere because a lot of students really struggle with
That's
their home
huge.
lives having a
Yes.
peaceful atmosphere. So really, it's not igniting negative thinking or igniting even hateful, ill talk between your siblings, like
Right.
not engaging that. Like,
Yeah, avoiding that hero, victim, villain, that drama triangle is huge.
Right. And so it's like disengage, go retract, go to your room and find things that bring you happiness and bring you peace. And so whether it's writing, it's listening to positive music, we do have to be really clear about listening to positive music, because some music won't help you. It'll make you more strifeful, hateful. And so whether it's getting outside and going for a walk, so those are those things that we talk to the students about over the holiday season, because that's something that is hard for other students to recognize. Some students are, yay, break, we get to go home. And for some students, it is the nightmare that they are dreading, is to go home for 2 weeks. So it's also just like disengage, find the things, and stay in the things that keep you happy. And so Dawn can share some other things that she has experienced.
Yeah, I would say it's really important to determine what you can control. So when I look at that, I say, okay, I can control my attitude. I can control my response. I can control my hope. Those are the things I have control over. And so looking at that and saying, I'm going to choose what and how I engage with people. So I'm not going to be the one, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to bring up those things that flare up a little, fight or argument or discontent. I want to be there to sow seeds of hope, to let people know what I appreciate them. Like, I look for ways to add value to people. How do I appreciate people? How do I love on them the best? How do I speak their love language? So that's one thing. The second thing is, what can I do to keep conversations and things pleasant? So I know at Thanksgivings, we've had conversation cards where each person answers questions about themselves. We go around the dinner table, talk about things, what you're thankful for, whatever those things are. But that has been really helpful in setting some boundaries to direct our conversation. If you are looking for ways to show gratitude and what we like about each other, or something about our past, like give what's your best memory from Thanksgiving's past? What's your best Christmas memory? What's your, and look for the best and try to encourage that talk about the best things rather than the worst things. You have that ability to control the flow of conversation to some degree. And so those are some things that I look at and say, to really look at, how do I love well? How do I listen more than I talk? And how do I help direct towards positive conversation?
That's real good. And it's sometimes easier said than done, but it's really not. I mean, it seems like we get overwhelmed thinking, oh yeah, it's easy to say, then I got to try and then I fail. But it really is that simple. And so Donnie made me think of my old friend. He was a principal now, but when he was trying to get his teaching career going, he was a great coach. So all the schools like to have him hang around, but they didn't quite have a spot for him in the teaching position yet. So they would make positions for him and try to find when things would open up. And so for a couple of years, they put him with delinquent kids, like in school suspension, I think. And at first, I think he said he was just like, oh, what am I doing? This is terrible. And he got in there and he said, you know what I discovered? He's like, these kids have terrible home lives. And if I just treat them like people, it's like, at first they have these attitudes. And I just look at them like, hey, dude, quit trying to be a tough guy. I'm not here to like insult you. I ain't trying to get you in trouble. If you're cool with me, I'm cool with you. And he started just having a conversation. And so when new delinquent kids would come in and they weren't familiar with them, they would like attack them, that not physically, but they would just spout, cuss them out. And the other students he had a relationship with would actually put them in line. They would stick up for him. Like, you don't talk to him like that. And then a culture kind of came about that. And I've done a lot of work with homeless populations of all ages, different genders, most recently homeless veterans. And what's crazy is, and it's easy to understand when you think about it, but a lot of people miss, the forest for the trees. But a lot of them lash out, okay? A lot of them have like these extreme attitude or behavioral issues, or could become physically violent. And all that stems from, most of the time, is a feeling of powerlessness. And so what I noticed, it may be extreme with the homeless, what I noticed that is after I had that experience and I would go to like a holiday or birthday party and I would watch family engage with each other, I noticed the people that typically lash out or bring more confrontation, or they poke people to have a confrontation, is because it's really a reaction out of that feeling of powerlessness. When they feel like they don't have any value to the table, they isolate. And if they can't isolate, then they'll come and try to provoke. And it almost feels them comforting because it gives them a sense of control, even though it's toxic. But you guys have experience with that. Would you agree with that experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's something that all of your language that you're talking about reminds me of something that I would talk to the students about. And especially during the holidays, because we're a 10-week unit. And usually if we start at the beginning of the year, we're starting to tighten up now. We're starting to shut down before the holiday season. But before the Thanksgivings, the holiday season comes, we would talk about the value of self-control. And so and of course we think of self-control like,
pushing the plate away from dessert is what I think of.
Right. Number one, nobody likes control.
Right.
And number two, nobody likes to control yourself. You don't like to control yourself. I don't want to be controlled by anybody, especially myself, right? But I thought this was very fun for the students. Is we thought of a good illustration to show the students is to take a tree, okay? And the benefits out of self-control would be what? So if it's pushing a plate away, right? If it's getting out and exercising, I just got to go do it, right? But the benefits of self-control can be peace, because I'm going to control the words that come out of my mouth.
Right.
And when I control the words that come out of my mouth, I can maybe have more joy or togetherness in my family, right? So then in your mind space, you can be healthier, right? By being kind. It's a better well-being and more of a calmness. So I took my pen here and pencil and I drew a little picture. So self-control is the trunk of the tree.
That's good, yeah.
The branches, right? We had a windstorm last night. So we all had this windstorm. There are branches in my backyard because of this windstorm. What's a branch disconnected from the tree? It's nothing. It's going to be lifeless. But if you have the trunk of the tree, there's the benefits of life. And so self-control is the trunk of the tree. And if you want good byproducts out of your life, right? Joy, peace, kindness, calmness, togetherness, love, being healthy, a wholeness, well-being, you have to stay anchored to the trunk of the tree, which is, it's yourself. It's controlling yourself. So that's what it reminded me of when you were talking about your coach, that's what it is. It's us controlling our own processes and our own responses in order to get the benefit that we want.
Yeah, not to get spiritual, but my church for a long time, one of our leaders coined the phrase seat of peace, SEAT, seat of peace. And we would kind of hold each other accountable to where we see people getting aggravated or frustrated, their kids or wife or something, or spouse, whoever it was. And we'd be like, hey, come out of your seat. We'd smile. But that was a trigger. They knew that was a cue that's saying, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm kind of losing self-control a little bit. I'm starting to get frustrated. And what that does is it keeps people powerful, and it reminds them they do have self-control over their emotions. And so a lot of times when we're engaging employees and we're also engaging someone at holidays or that we may not be around or that may be disengaged with us, a lot of times is making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable and bring value. And what happens, that feeling of powerlessness that they entertain in their mind starts to come down a little bit. And now they begin to engage. And sometimes it just takes that, like Don mentioned earlier, and you mentioned on the podcast with Mike, I was fantastic. I can't remember exactly how you guys worded it, but it was on a deeper sense of listening. And literally just hear what they're saying. And a lot of times if we just quit trying to listen to respond to someone, but actually let me read between the lines. What are they really saying? Because usually when someone has an issue, in my own life, I say it like this. If I have an issue with one person, it could be their fault. 2 people, it may be their fault, probably mine. But 3 people, it's definitely me. I'm mad at everybody or I'm critical. You know what I mean? And so if I see people lash out, even people that I love and I respect, and they're not toxic, but maybe they're having a bad day. But if I see them start to pin out 2, 3, 4 things, then I know there's something deeper between the lines. And it's like, okay, let me read through this. Let me have a deeper level of listening and re-engage this conversation to really see what's going on. And sometimes we could reach in there and treasure hunt, so to speak, and pull out some treasure. And when we do that, it kind of shifts the whole attitude, doesn't it?
It really does. I was just thinking too, I wanted to let your listeners know that if you go to globalpriority.org and you scroll down the page, so it's globalpriority.org, you scroll down, you'll see a big green banner, put in a couple of information, and you can get a free Roundtable booklet. And it's our values, it's the connection book. And we kind of put that together for during COVID. And it starts with connection, then it's got listening and restraint. It has hope, it has self-esteem, and it has forgiveness. And I think those are really powerful values as you come into the holiday time. Because when you were talking about listening at a deeper level, so much of that listening is tied in with our restraint. I was thinking about, like my daughter, I mentioned she's a lot of anxiety and we're dealing with some things. And what I was just doing the roundtable of restraint, and we did listening first and we did restraint. And I was thinking about I had this realization that a lot of the problem probably we're having is that I don't hold the space for her to respond. So I ask the question, she's quiet, and so then I start filling in the blanks for her. So are you feeling like blah, 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 blah? Is it bothering you because da, 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 da? Like all the things I think I know about her because she's my daughter, I start filling in the blanks. And I just had to really commit to hold the space. Just ask a question and let it be uncomfortable. Be willing to wait for her to be ready to respond. And don't fill in the blanks for her. And that made a huge difference for us. Like I saw a 180 turnaround the next day. And so I just know those are the things that I would really suggest to people to go check those out. You can do roundtable with other people, or even read through the material to give yourself that touchstone to go back to. How do I listen well? How do I restrain my tongue? How do I remember that there's life and death in the words that I speak? That I can speak life, or I can speak something that really hurts somebody, something that I can't even see. We're talking about restraint, and somebody in my roundtable said, a lot of times you say things and you can't even see the devastation that you left behind, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. And
Right.
so, I'm like, those are the things. So look at that. And then hope is in there, which I think is fabulous. Self-esteem, because I think a lot of what you were talking about with that, going back to that self-control, and your friend who's the coach that had the kids, is that a lot of those kids, their self-esteem has really suffered. And that when we have a healthy sense of who we are and we understand our why, we know our purpose, it is so much easier to be peaceful, to feel that confidence that we're moving forward, to have hope. When we lack our self-esteem, then a lot of things start to go down the tubes with it. So I think those are, and then forgiveness, because, we all make mistakes, and we all need forgiven, and we all probably need to forgive somebody. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. We have to prevent villainizing, especially, employees, especially family members around the holidays. It's so easy because maybe we've dealt with certain attitudes for years, and we come off and we treat them, we just jump right on that drama triangle, and someone's always going to be a hero once you're on there. Someone's always going to be a villain. Someone's always going to be a victim.
Yeah.
And it just switches. You'll switch to every single piece of that thing until it'll just cause drama and drama and drama to expand. And so you need restraint, like you said, too, to stop yourself when issues or challenges come up to, we see it in politics all the time. Everyone that disagrees, we demonize, and it's ridiculous. I catch myself getting into it and teach this stuff, right? And we get caught up. We're like, wait a minute, I'm breaking my own rules here. Then I have to kind of step back and realize that they're not bad. They just have a different perspective. And so a lot of that is just, it's just so relevant. So thank you both so much. Don, is there anything else you like to promote? Any other resources you go? I want to recommend your podcast, Living Like a Leader, right? iTunes,
Yes, that's
it's
right.
out there in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, probably. How can they find it?
Yes, it's on pretty much every platform. Yeah, if you look us up, it's Living Like a Leader, Global Priority Solutions. And we are available on pretty much every platform. Any podcast platform that you listen to, you can probably find us on.
I almost use it, I like to think it's great for daily devotional, and I don't even mean that from a spiritual sense, but if you're just, I know it's the language I use because how I understand it, but if you're just looking, hey, I just want to remind myself of some things that I really believe in and kind of reinforce that, that's a great podcast. Just listen to all the time and get that. So Tanya, what about Antivirus Youth? Anything you want to throw out there?
Yes, you can go to antivirusyouth.org to check out more of our information. If you would like to get our program into your school systems or private school, homeschool, whatever's working for you right now, we have resources available to do that. So you can check that out.
So ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Don, did you have something else?
I just wanted to mention too, if you're interested, if you want to know more about the roundtable process itself, if you go to globalpriority.org, not only can you download that free book, but we also do trainings. We do virtual trainings where we work with people on becoming facilitators of roundtables. So if you think, I think I might like to do that, we do trainings at least once a month where we take an hour and a half for 4 days and we train people on facilitating roundtables. And I've had many people tell me, even like I've worked a lot with Maxwell coaches and different people like that who are like, you know what, this facilitator training has made me better at facilitating all my other trainings too. So I just encourage people to check that out. So we'd love to have you check out our organization and see the things that we do. I also, if anybody's interested in knowing more about generations, that's something that I do a lot of speaking about and helping with. And we touched on it today, but there's just so many things. You look at how does that affect us? How does each generation view their work? How does each generation view their finances? How do they view their everything from the work environment that they need to what is the biggest fear? And so I think those are helpful things to know. Yeah, it's a generalization, but it really helps when we're kind of trying to develop programs and create a team when you're trying to build that team. So I just encourage you to just check me out, come find me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Global Priority. You can contact me through there, but I love to help people figure out how to make things work better. Just about making life work.
Don, we need to get you to come on one of our webinars for our safety council program, and where we have, like I said, we're about 30% HR, 30% safety, 15 and 20% CEOs of local employers that come in we do it twice a month now. We'll have to come get you, do a full blown, give you like 40 minutes to kind of hit all of it and without interruption, just good interview.
That'd be great. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. So ladies, thank you again. Everybody out there, thank you for listening. Hey, engage with your family this holiday season, engage with your employees, talk to them about stress, talk to them, and just at the water cooler, if you're in person, if not, set up a Zoom meeting, just even one-on-one, just connect with people's faces again, just any way you can. And really just, I think it was like 37% of our members we just surveyed about stress, that loneliness is a factor that's making them stress. So 37%, I mean, that's a pretty big number. So everybody out there, just engaged, be blessed, stay safe from COVID, stay safe in your work activities, and just engage and be happy. All right. So everybody out there, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.